1 2. Test 1 2.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello.
Battery testing.
It too.
1 2. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Ooh. What happened? Test 1 2.
That was not working either. It might be a connectivity issue over there. Is that one?
Test 1 2. Test 1 2 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Test 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 1 2. I can hear that faintly.
Is it because the battery? Can we just change it? It eats them up like that?
Test 1 2. 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 1 2 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. 2 3. 1 2 1 2. 1 2. Ain't nobody hit nothing. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2 1 2 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
This one's working.
Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Testing 1 2 3.
I took the patent off of it.
Testing 1 2 3. Let's go. Is that one ready?
Test 1 2.
Okay. We have a New York Times best-selling author of the book Legacy. So join us. Yeah, there's lunch right in the lobby. If you Regina, you want to make your announcement again about lunch that we're ready to start and lunch.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're about to begin. There is lunch in the foyer if you haven't already, in the Cobb building, if you have not already had opportunity to enjoy lunch. There's opportunity to have it if there are some left if you choose to have it. But we're going to begin. So I want to just welcome you guys to the Creary Lecture. And we'll be spending some time today with Dr. Uche Blackstock, a best-selling author. And so I'm going to pass it over to Dean Prothosith.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I would begin by thanking Dr. Regina Ofodele and the Office of Student Affairs for hosting and sponsoring today's event. I'm going to ask you to join me in giving her and Terrence Starks in particular, along with Ebony Luke and Chaz Metlock, a round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I am honored to introduce Dr. Ruth Creary to you. She and her husband, Dr. Ludlow Creary, are sponsors and supporters of CDU and the College of Medicine in particular from many years ago. She and her husband, in addition to all of the service they did through the county and to South Los Angeles for issues of health, also were the co-owners of a major set of nursing home and life care institutions that were in Beverly Hills as well as in South Los Angeles. Dr. Ruth Creary is a mental health provider. She has her PhD and she has served in various capacities within the South Los Angeles and broader Los Angeles County communities. You can read her and her husband's bio on the back of your program. Dr. Ludlow Creary, also known as Dr. C to some of us, was chair of the family medicine department here at CDU, as well as a huge chief of family medicine at the former King Hospital as a part of that King Drew Medical Center. In fact, he followed David Satcher, I believe, as chair of family medicine here. So it's my honor to introduce Dr. Ruth Creary, who wants to share their philanthropic activities now as a part of the Family Foundation.
Thank you, Dean Deborah. Thank you. I am so delighted to be here today. As the Dean has said, my husband and I, we not only participate in the Creary Family Lectureship program, but we also are just delighted because my husband was here when there were trailers and bungalows, okay? Yeah, so when I brought him to the campus a year or so ago, brought such joy to see so many students here that look like each of us, as well as all the buildings. We went around the buildings and up and down the streets, and it was just an incredible moment. So family members, and I can't see everyone, if you could please stand so I can introduce you. You're part of the Creary family and our foundation. I'll start with our daughter, Bridget Harper, who has joined us today. I don't know if any of the grands or the children, the other children are here, but we thank you for being with us. We are honored to be part of this amazing group and celebrating today with Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science and Dr. Uche Blackstock. We're so excited. She's here as a physician, and she's with a lot of intellect. We call it the guts and the grits and the gorgeousness too. And she's here to tell us the painful story of health inequities and racism in medicine today, which I know my husband talked about many times when I first met him in the late 70s and his journey through Ventura County Hospital as a resident and racism back in those 60s and the 70s, and it follows us today. And that's kind of it's a painful moment still. But with Charles R. Drew University, we're going to move in a different direction. And unfortunately, my husband's not able to join us today. He has some health challenges, but he wanted to welcome each of you here at the university, especially our medical students and Dr. Uche. Another dream that was so important to have at Charles Drew University, and this was, I was talking to the president earlier, he said there was architectural vision and thinking back in the late 50s and the early 60s before the bungalows and trailers came. So to see a dream actualized, a freestanding medical school has also been achieved. Congratulations to Drs. Carlisle, Protostit, and all of the faculty and staff who made this dream a reality and an incredible achievement. The Creary Family Foundation, who would have thought that a young boy from Jamaica, post-Depression, being raised at that time by a single mom, had set his dreams on getting a family member to sponsor him just one day so that he would be able to come to the United States to finish college and to go to medical school, and then have the ability to provide medical care for the underserved in America, and specifically Los Angeles, South Los Angeles, the Watts Willowbrook community. Another, me, a young female from small town Midwest USA who wanted to help others as her parents, Dorothy and Marvin Fisher, and my dad, who deceased on one early Christmas Eve morning. They taught us to be able to help others to do things. We can each do things that make a difference. And who would have thought that the two of us, we would meet, we'd marry, and we would merge. To merge our mutual dreams of forming some 30-something years later, but the Creary Family Foundation, to support and assist almost 50 charitable organizations. CFF provides scholarship monies to educate medical students, and we graduated our first student this past year who was a Drew UCLA student. And when we give a scholarship, we pick you up by your second year and we follow you through graduation. So you can plan on a little extra as you're completing the job. And in addition, we do our scholarship fundraisers and our presentations with the Charles R. Drew Medical Auxiliary, and Dolores Fleming, who is our president, I saw earlier. I don't know if she's still here, but we will be giving scholarships again in February. We also work with the National Medical Fellowships, Inc., and our 4 partners with Howard University, where my husband graduated medical school. We love each and every one of these partners. So we're here today, and part of this journey is to help and support our university in the Watts Willowbrook communities of Los Angeles. And please join us, and on behalf of the Creary Family Foundation, we welcome each of you here, and we thank you for attending this incredible Creary Lectureship program and Dr. Uche Blackstock. Thank you and welcome again. Thank you.
So I'm Dr. Regina Ofodole. I'm the Associate Dean of Student Affairs and Admissions here at CDU. I'm a proud graduate of the CDU UCLA program, so it's very important for me to come home and really begin to be a part of the legacy that we're building here. But I would like to introduce, I'm gonna call her my friend because I've been just seeing her everywhere now, and one of our amazing medical students here as well. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background about Dr. Blackstock. She is co-founder and CEO of the Advancing Health Equity organization. And one thing that's pretty amazing about her is that she and her twin sister, her mother, are all graduates of Harvard University, making them the first Black woman daughter legacy graduates of Harvard School of Medicine. So she's already made an important part, become an important part of our history. But in 2019, she took the bold step and she founded Advancing Health Equity with the mission of partnering with healthcare organizations to dismantle racism in healthcare and to close the gap on racial inequities. And so she has also, in part of this work, she's received numerous awards, including the American Medical Women's Association Award, a 2021 Presidential Award, and the 2021 Harvard Humanist of the Year, and the AAMC Brooklyn Chapter's 2022 Valiant Service Award. So with that being said, I just want to keep it brief because we really want to hear the amazing conversations that are about to happen. I want to welcome Dr. Uche Blackstock and our moderator, who is McKean Yassar, a member of our class of 2027. So please come forward.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you can move it.
Yeah.
Let's see. 1, 2. There we go.
All right. Mic check, mic check. 1, 2, 1, 2. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Y'all could do way better than that. I said good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
All right. So it looks like we can go ahead and get started. Thank you all for showing up today. We greatly appreciate it. Dr. Blackstock, thank you for coming. We are so excited to have you. As was mentioned, my name is McKean. I am a second-year medical student here at Charles Archer University in the College of Medicine. I'll be moderating our conversation today with the incomparable, incredible Dr. Blackstock. We're going to start off with Dr. Blackstock reading from Legacy. Black Physician Reckons with Racism in Medicine. Real page turner. If you have not opened up the book, shame on you. It is a very gripping and just powerful read. So Dr. Blackstock, please.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I've been on the road since the book came out in January of this year, and it is just extra special that my last trip of the year is here to Charles Drew University and to be here with all of you. So I'm incredibly honored. I am going to read a few pages from the introduction of my book, just for folks who don't know who I am, or just to give some context, and then we're gonna do a Q&A. I told McKean I don't want you just to ask me questions. I want to be in conversation because
I had so many questions.
No, I mean I don't want
all night typing them up and
Okay.
No, we'll be.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
But no, I just want it to be conversational and real.
Definitely.
Okay, so here goes. When I was a little girl, my twin sister Oni and I used to visit our mother at work. Her name was Dr. Dale Gloria Blackstock. And in the 1980s and 90s, she was an attending physician at Kings County Hospital Center, one of the public hospitals in Brooklyn, not far from our home in Crown Heights. Our mother worked long hours at her job, and so sometimes we'd head to the hospital after school to see her and do our homework. Walking down the disinfectant-scented hallways, our shoes squeaking on the floors, we'd make our way to the large, echoing cafeteria, where we'd pull out textbooks from our backpacks and settle down to work alongside the physicians, nurses, technicians, and aides taking a break. The staff behind the cafeteria counter knew us well, especially because we strongly resembled our mother, would smile warmly and ask, "Visiting your mother today?" After homework was done, we'd sneak into her clinic and ask her for some change to spend on our favorite red Jell-O. She'd hand it to us, and if we were quiet, let us stay and observe for a minute or two as she examined a patient. Our mother was warm but serious with those in her care. Occasionally, her face would reveal a smile, but more often than not, she was extremely focused on what they were saying and what was going on in their lives. She'd grown up in the same Brooklyn neighborhood where the hospital was located. The daughter of a single mother from New Jersey, raised on public assistance, she'd become the first person in her family to graduate college. She went to Brooklyn College. And after graduating from there, went on to Harvard Medical School and graduated from there in 1976. And then she returned home to Brooklyn, to her community. At Kings County SUNY Downstate, she wasn't just taking care of her patients. She was tending to her neighbors. In her interactions with them, she always seemed to know as much about their children and families as she did about their respective medical problems. When you came in for a visit with Dr. Blackstock, you weren't only having your blood pressure or cholesterol checked. You were also meeting with someone who was going to assess how your whole being was faring. I believe our mother practiced what is now known as culturally competent and responsive care, which means that the entire complex nature of the patient's background and the social context in which they live, work, love, and pray is considered during evaluation. And her patients loved her for it. She was always, hello? Okay. She was always bringing home little gifts from them, a knitted shawl, homemade cookies, tokens of appreciation. My sister and I were only 19 years old in 1997 when we lost our mother to leukemia, and she was just 47. She died too young, but by then her influence had indelibly rubbed off on us. Our mother's passion for learning, her dogged perseverance, and her commitment to serving her community heavily influenced our own decisions to become physicians. Oni and I both graduated from Harvard undergrad and then attended Harvard Medical School, the school's first Black mother-daughter legacy graduates. And like her, we both went to work with historically underserved populations after graduating. My sister at Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx, while I went to train at Kings County, SUNY Downstate in Brooklyn, following in our mother's footsteps. In the years since then, I have felt her by my side in so many of my own interactions with patients. Her ability to listen to and truly care continues to be a model for me, and it's something that our patients are crying out for now more than ever. Thank you.
Thank you for reading that. First off, if I could just give you your flowers. So again, when I said that y'all should read this book, I really meant that y'all should read this book because I think you do such an excellent job in this in terms of like combining like your personal narrative, memoir, like the stories of your mother and father, then kind of like your journey navigating through your training up until now. But you also do a lot of work in terms of helping bring context to like the narratives of your patients and what you were experiencing in terms of the structural lens that, you know, is needed for us to really understand how we're being impacted by these larger systems that we need to take action in order for us to actually give care to our patients. So I think you just do an excellent, wonderful job. And then the first third of the book, when you're just talking about your family and your mom, it was my favorite part of the book. So I just wanted to give you your flowers.
Thank you.
Excellent job there. I guess the first question that comes to mind for me is just like, what brought you to want to write this book?
Yeah, so that question has an interesting answer because if someone told me I'd be sitting here in December of 2024 writing about my New York Times bestseller, I'd be like, what? No. And that's just because when I tell you about like the journey that I took to get here, it wasn't a journey that I had ever expected. But that's why I'm actually here. I talk to a lot of the younger people here. I want you really to listen that it's so important that you do the work that is important to you, that gives you purpose, and that is in alignment with you. I write about it in the book, but I'll just give you some background. I was in academic medicine for almost 10 years. I'm an emergency medicine physician by training. I was an associate professor at NYU School of Medicine, and we can get more into this, but through a lot of experiences that I had, I made this really difficult decision to leave my career in academic medicine, and it was incredibly scary. I always think about, what being brave means, and being brave actually means like making decisions when it is scary and not knowing where or how you're going to land, but just trusting in that. And so I left to focus on my organization, Advancing Health Equity, which is essentially is a consulting firm that I founded in 2019. I started with just trainings, but we know trainings are not, that effective. We have to have a holistic approach to how we address, racial health inequities. And so I have built the company from just myself to over 13 people over the last 5 years. But when I left, I was so scared because no one I knew left academic medicine. I left, I was working part-time in urgent care, and the other part-time building advancing health equity. And then that was in January of 2020. And so I was like, okay, everything's great. I'm working in urgent care. Things are pretty chill. I'm just going to focus on my company. And then everything goes sideways. And I write about in the book how when I was working in urgent care, I was still, I was working actually in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And so even though it had been gentrified, I was still seeing what I was seeing in those first few weeks of the pandemic was the browning of my patients. Like, I noticed that my mostly essential workers and service workers were coming in, and my white patients, they were able to work from home, right? They were able to do remote work, right? They were not in public facing jobs. And so after that like second or third week of March, I actually wrote an op-ed about what I was seeing and why I thought the pandemic would disproportionately impact our communities. And I remember saying to my medical assistant, I'm like, do you realize all the patients look like us? And when I wrote that piece, we didn't have any of the racial and ethnic demographic data yet anywhere, not even in New York City or anywhere else. But I just felt like, given the work that I had been doing, what I was seeing, my lived experience, I had to raise the alarm. And so I started writing about it. And that was published in an op-ed. And I started writing several more op-eds after that. They were published in the Washington Post. And I became one of the first voices in the pandemic to talk about racial health inequities. And my literary agent, I'm going to get there, my book agent, she heard me on a local New York City NPR station, a radio show one day, and she cold emailed me, and she's like, I've looked you up, I've read about your background, and I think you have a story to tell, and I think you're the only person to tell that story. And I know. And so I talked to her, we hit it off. She is a South Asian American woman who is very much interested in amplifying Black women's voices. And so she was just like, we need to write this book together. And so I worked on a book proposal for 6 months. It's like 60 pages long. It was like 2 sample chapters and then an overview of the book. And one thing that I didn't know is that with books, and this is why the other thing, I don't know if folks have seen this hashtag, publishing is so white. So publishing is so white. And what I realized is your literary agents, just so you know, in case you're ever thinking about writing a book, they are the gatekeepers. Like, they are the ones that have the contacts with the publishers, the publishing houses. And so she sent my proposal out to about 20 of her contacts, and 9 got back to her and said they wanted to meet with me. And so my proposal went up for auction. Yeah. Wow. And I ended up actually going with Viking, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House. And Viking actually, they were my favorite. And I remember telling my agent, even if they don't bid the highest for me, I still want to go with them. But they bid the highest.
As they should have. It's like you had a sixth sense that was going to work out.
Because they didn't want to change my story. They basically were like, we just want to sign you. Like, we love what you have to say. We just want to sign you. Like their vision for the book was the same as my vision for the book. Yes. And that's also what's really important, to work with people who have your vision.
And respect it.
And want to support it and amplify it. Yes.
Understood. That's an amazing journey. And, when it comes to, you doing that work in terms of talking about the disparities during, the worst of COVID, that's actually how I found you. So I've been following you for a while now. Yeah, so.
I didn't even know that. Oh my gosh.
Just a little starstruck, just a little bit. So again, yes. It was your agent was right. It was you doing that work that helped expose me to seeing how advocacy can be had on that level. And so I just wanted to appreciate you for that.
And just so you know, I felt so called to the moment. I don't know if anyone in this space has ever felt that, where you feel just called to step up in that moment. And there was just so much uncertainty about what was happening, knowing that our communities were going to be the most impacted. So I was like, I just have to use my platform. I think by then I already had a good number of social media followers, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just put out health information. I don't know who's listening. And then I also got because I wrote so much, I was also asked to go on air a lot. So CNN and MSNBC would call for me, and out of that, I actually became an MSNBC medical contributor. I was the first Black woman medical contributor. Thank you. but I remember, thank you. But I remember my talent agent telling me, she's a Black woman, telling me that, Uche, when they call for you to go on the show, it's not about like just regurgitating what the health news is, right? They are calling you for your perspective. And that was the first time anyone ever, being in predominantly white institutions, as opposed to like wanting to hear your opinion, it's like you're silenced or you're not
constantly having to navigate, them brushing aside, your voice and the microaggressions, the implicit and explicit biases in terms of whether it be, your attendings and, them being dismissive, or even your patients in terms of not wanting to have a patient, having a physician that's a Black physician, or not believing you when you say like, oh, I'm the one who's in charge, as a chief resident, right? Completely understood. But yes, your voice is very much so been one that has been valued and invaluable through, even encouraging a lot of us as students to want to pursue careers where we have those lenses, right? And yeah, so, it's just so many. Read the book. If you have not read the book, read the book. And speaking to the book, I wanted to kind of like circle back and just kind of like start from the beginning, because you talk a lot about your growing up in New York City, growing up in Brooklyn when you were younger, kind of like how your experience, with your family and getting that exposure that you did contrasted, with your parents, and how that inspired you towards medicine.
Sure, and I just have to give a shout out to Dr. Jessie Sherrod, who's right here, who's my auntie, who attended medical school with my mother. Yes, and so knew her firsthand. I would say that, I feel so fortunate to have grown up with a mom who was a physician, just because growing up, that's all I saw. So I knew it was a possibility.
It never seemed out of reach.
No,
because you had Black doctors literally
not
right there.
Not only that, but in our neighborhood in Brooklyn, like we had several doctors, and we lived in, it was a working class, middle class neighborhood. It wasn't like it was, upper class neighborhood. We lived in Crown Heights. Like I had a crack house next door to me. I saw shootings on my block, but we still had my, Dr. Mildred Clark, who was an OBGYN. My pediatrician was a Black woman. Like everyone,
Right.
and my mother would have my sister and me come with her to the local meetings of the Black women physicians group. So that's all I saw since I was a little girl. But at the same time, like it didn't necessarily make things easier when I started going to medical school and when I became a physician. And you think it would have.
But I can understand, because you're separate from that environment that your parents were maintaining, and separate from, the other doctors in your community, in your neighborhood. So now you're just placed in this whole new context, completely separate.
Yes, and so my father is from Jamaica. Originally he came to the States when he was 17. My mom's from Brooklyn, but they both are from very humble beginnings, and they were the first in their family to go to college, right? They're first to go to grad school, and I think for my parents, they just wanted to be able to provide my twin sister and me with everything that they didn't have, and so I definitely have so much love and appreciation to them, for that. And so even though on our block a lot was happening, they still kept us in our own little warm bubble, to make sure that we were studying. We can go out and play with our friends until we were done studying.
I think you wrote in one part where it was like you would have like a sleepover, and then your mom would have y'all do math problems after a movie.
My friends knew that if they were coming to a sleepover at our house, that they were going to be also doing math problems before math worksheets, before we started watching movies and eating popcorn.
Oh, it was before. It wasn't after.
No. But
my
mom did not play. I mean, we were like, she had very high expectations for us. Saturdays were full, like gymnastics, modern dance, reading comprehension, music theory. My mother just like, I need to give these girls everything that I didn't have. And so obviously she did an amazing job as a mom. And I talked about in the intro, I read about this, I was only 19 when she passed away, and it's now I'm 47, the age that she was when she died. And I think when I look back, as a 19-year-old, I just saw my mom as my mom, But now as a 47-year-old with my own company, I have 2 of my own children, I'm a partner, like someone's partner, like I just thinking about everything that she was juggling. And then at work, right, having to deal with, you know, a lot of what we know happens, you know, at work. It just, I'm thinking about, it's amazing to me what she, you know, and I was only 19. I wish I had more compassion and understanding for the complexity of who she was.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it makes, you know, reading this is, you know, made me want to text my mom just to tell her I love her.
Yes, definitely tell your moms that you love them.
Yeah, and you know, I think you know too what you speak to in terms of, you know, your mom being like this very dynamic person, but also reflecting back on her life and understanding all the things that she had to navigate in terms of interpersonal racism, discrimination within, you know, the medical space, within hospitals. I know that for you, when you went off to Harvard, kind of like leaving from, you know, the community that grown you, reared you, raised you, and then now being in this new context, you know, and in a lot of ways the experience was a good one. But then also you also had seemingly some interactions and engagements, especially when in the part of the book, try not to give a spoiler, where you yourself were in the hospital and seeing how you were being dismissed or mistreated. How would you describe your training journey once you actually got there?
Yeah, no, I talk about, and this is not a surprise. I have a chapter dedicated to how I had a case of appendicitis in medical school, and so I went to the ER 3 times over the course of a week, and only on the last visit was I diagnosed correctly. But during those previous visits, I was questioned about how much pain I seemed to be in. I didn't seem to be in that much pain. I was questioned a lot about my sexual history. I was sent home the first time. I was admitted the second time without the correct diagnosis. And by the 3rd time I came back, my appendix had perforated. And I ended up having complications. And I actually missed about a month of medical school during my first year because of that. But that was a very pivotal experience for me because I know that experience, like looking back on it, I know that it has changed like how I practice, right? All I wanted is for them to listen to me. And I felt like I wasn't being listened to. And I feel like now I have that experience. I have experience as a patient and as a clinician. Right. So, and being on both sides and seeing that. And some of the people who took care of me were people who were like so revered and respected, like, got like, best of the best awards.
But there was no empathy.
Right.
Like there was no empathy. There was a certain level of just pure dismissal, and lack of attention. And so I know you talked about like, you can't necessarily completely attribute it to, racism, right? But it could have been. Was it the implicit biases of those individuals that were having them act in the way or manners that they had acted towards you? And then you referenced the Toni Morrison quote where it's like racism will, the distraction. I forget the direct quote.
I know, I can't think of it right now. It's in my own book. But basically the distraction of racism prevents you from like really just like living your life. Like you're always thinking about like, did this happen because of that or was it something different, right?
Exactly.
And I don't know, but I do know from the data, I do know from other lived experiences, I do know from my patients' experiences that, we are more likely to be listened to less, right? We're actually more likely to be spoken over during clinical interactions. We're more likely to be interrupted. And so I was just a medical student then, but that totally changed how I saw myself and how I care for my patients.
Right. No, definitely. And then you also mentioned, understanding that level in terms of implicit bias, but then you're very consistent throughout the book in terms of talking explicitly about systemic racism and structural racism. I know that you talked a lot about how during your medical training, there were a lot of things missed in terms of how they talked about certain, where certain medical myths came from in terms of and how that impacted clinical care. So like for how they measure like kidney function, how they do spirometry,
right lung function,
lung function,
yeah.
And so how would you say from medical school through your training, like how was it constantly kind of like seeing these things pop up, or wasn't it Was it later that you started realizing
No, it was a journey. And I feel like for me, it was a journey. I feel like medical students now, you all are so sophisticated and so much wiser. But
we're learning from you all. Like.
But I feel like for me, it was a journey of realizations that I made. I think it wasn't until I got to residency where I went back to my neighborhood to train that I actually started thinking about what disease and illness represents in our communities, and that a lot of what we see is about what happens, like, on a community level, right? In our patients' neighborhoods, and not really getting that education in medical school. So I feel like in med school, there's when I was in med school, there's a lot of emphasis on the dyad of the physician and the patient, and what you do and what you say matters the most. But what we know is, like, from that, the pyramid from the CDC is that, yes, the clinical education, clinical interventions make a difference in terms of health, but we know what has the most impact on health outcomes is, systems of oppression, right? Or like, inequality, housing, racism, all of that has much more impact. And I wish I had that sort of more holistic idea of how it is to care for patients when I was in medical school. But I think that's what medical schools now are working towards.
Yeah, that's what we're learning here at Charles R. Drew University.
Yes. And that will make you even better physicians.
Completely agree. One thing I did want to ask you about was in terms of, after, going through your residency training and then starting your faculty appointment at NYU, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yes, go ahead.
Because you ended up leaving, right?
Yeah, I ended up leaving. And so I always have to preface this. I see the dean there. I just want to say, I think, okay, let me go back a little bit. So I had only thought about going into academics because that's all I knew. My mother was in academics. I love this idea of being in an academic institution because of, not only do you care for patients, but you do research and you're teaching and interacting with trainees. It's very intellectually stimulating. And so I thought that's what I wanted to do, right? And so I did everything that I was supposed to do to get there. So I have this faculty position at NYU, and in the middle of New York City, right? So one of the most diverse cities in the world, but the department itself wasn't that diverse. I was one of 2 faculty of color there.
Just 2?
Yeah.
Out of all
and sometimes 1 over the 10 years. Mm-hmm.
Out of the whole faculty.
Yeah, and we had the largest department, like over 100 people. I know. And so, but I, again, I do what my parents told me to do, just work hard, keep your head down. So, I was doing a lot of medical education work. I actually developed the first emergency ultrasound curriculum for their medical school, a 4-year using bedside ultrasound to help complement how anatomy, physiology, and pathophysiology are taught. I also started the first ultrasound fellowship program for our department, for the emergency medicine department. So I was doing all this stuff that I thought I was supposed to do. And then 2 things happened. One, I was appointed to a DEI position in the medical school. And this was in 2017. And I was so excited about it because I was like, finally, I'll be able to do the work that I want to do that means a lot to me. And turns out, unfortunately, it was just a figurehead role. And they actually not only did not expect me to do anything, they didn't want me to do anything. And that was very, very painful. And in that role, I was silenced and muzzled. And that was a big, I always say, like, sometimes there's a slap in the face that you need. That was one of the slaps I needed because I was like, Uche, wake up out of it. And then the other one was I went up for promotion to associate professor, and everyone, your department has to approve your promotion, application. It was unanimously approved. They were like, oh, Uche, you are a slam dunk. And then I was denied. And I was just like, what? But, in those 2 moments, they happened very close to each other. I thought about, are you even happy being here? Like, do you feel like you're appreciated? Are you being valued? And I think, I talk about this often. People have heard me talk about this idea of sometimes what happens in predominantly white institutions for us is that you forget that you are someone that has the gifts to share. Like, you are the gift, right? But you end up, you end up, because of how you're treated, forgetting that. And so I just needed those slaps to remind me. And so
The
I
wake
said,
up calls.
yeah, it's the wake up calls that you need. And then, I talked to my village, my therapist, my girlfriends, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna just leave. And I'd actually been offered, I'm not gonna say where, another position at another medical school. But I was like, you know what? I think I just wanna go. I think I'm done with academics for now. And I think I just want to focus on my company and seeing what I could do with that. And I'll work part-time. And that was going to be the plan for 5 years. I was going to work part-time in urgent care and then part-time with my company. But then I talk about 2020. So then I became medical contributor. and then my company, we've just grown since then. So I made this decision. I took this leap, right? And I say this because I'm not saying people should leave academics. No. But what I'm saying is that you leave environments, particular environments that are not supportive of you. And I think we should always keep asking ourselves, and you do it even when you're as students, like, am I in an environment where I can thrive? Am I in an environment that supports me? Where I can show up as my full authentic self, right? And you always keep asking yourself that. I think I had never asked myself that. I think I was just doing what I was checking all the boxes.
And that wasn't fulfilling. That wasn't aligned. And then those wake up calls were the things that made you realize this is never going to align.
Yes, and what you mentioned, like the alignment piece, is something that in my older age of 40s, in my 40s, I didn't recognize. That alignment is so important. But with the young people here, I would always ask yourself earlier on, all the time, are you in alignment? What do you want to? What is your purpose? What are your values? Right? Like, always ask yourself that. And then also remember that you are the gifts, that like a lot of times when you're interviewing for jobs or, even if you're interviewing for residencies, you are interviewing them too, right? Because you want to know, is this an environment where I'm going to feel at home?
That's right. 100%. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit more now about the work that you currently do in terms of advancing health equity, because in the book, again, as I mentioned at the top, you do such a great job in terms of providing, these examples of patients that you've worked with or people that you've seen throughout their life, their health issues, but also making the ties and connections to, the disparities that are amplified, that they are experiencing, that are exacerbating their health conditions, are often due to the things that are happening outside of the hospital. They're, being exacerbated because they don't have access to insurance, because they don't have access to housing, because they don't have protections at their job that allow them time off to go to visit and take care of themselves and their families. And so, especially when we think about like DEI work, I think diversity within the health professions is something that's really, really important. Because similar to your story, my grandmother had a Black physician doctor, and it just normalized that was an option for me, right? It just made it seem like, oh, that is something I could do, and we need more of us in healthcare spaces because of racial concordant care. Actually shows that there's benefits that improves lifespan for Black patients and patients of color. But at the end of the day, it's like diversity is just one point, because it could put you in a position where you don't have any power. And then you're a spokesperson, and so now you're in a position where you're just doing something that's completely drastically different from the academia space. But I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about that work, what that looks like, and from your perspective, what are some of the larger things that we should be thinking about systemically and structurally that are impacting the health of our communities and our families that aren't really being taught in medical schools now?
So the first thing
is
yes.
just talk generally about your
about
work.
advancing health equity. Okay, so it's so interesting because I'm going to make an announcement here that I haven't officially made. So I'm founder and CEO of Advancing Health Equity, and it's essentially a strategic health equity consulting firm. We work with health and health adjacent organizations. So we work with local and state health departments, hospitals, health systems, pharmaceutical companies, so around both not only DEI but health equity, so internal facing cultural issues that they have within the workplace to ensure that a diverse workforce can show up and thrive, but also we do external facing work with communities. So for example, we may go in and I see Dr. Lane here. I saw her before, but we're doing some work with with Sutter. And we're doing some other work with Sutter Health.
Round of applause for Sutter Health.
Yes.
Round of applause for Sutter Health.
So we do work around psychological safety. We just want everyone to be able to, we go in and do assessments. So whether they're interviews, focus groups, surveys, trainings to help organizations work better together, people within organizations. But we also do focus groups on communities as well, and bring that information back to the organizations. And we do strategic planning. So the strategic planning part is really important. So we help organizations integrate health equity into their strategic plans so that the work is more sustainable.
Right, so that you have that, grounded community input,
Yes.
the grounded lived experiences, you bring that together and make sure it's embedded and that there's a level of accountability there to make sure that it's integrated. Okay,
yes.
got it.
But I'm not, no, I was going to say, so actually growing the organization. So I'm actually going to be transitioning from CEO to chief advisor, just so that we can have just a larger impact. And because I really want us to be known as like the premier strategic health equity firm. So a lot of organizations and companies, they'll go to, for example, like Ketchum. I don't know if you have Ketchum PR, like these big PR firms. They'll go to them for health equities consulting. And these are not organizations that specialize in health equity. They're not minority and women business owned organizations. So I really would love to spend the next few years positioning advancing health equity as that firm that these organizations can come to if health equity is a priority for them.
Understood.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing with us that.
What'd you say?
Thank you for the
the
announcement.
Sure.
We got the inside scoop. So in terms of the second part of my question, because we are currently, not to dim the mood, we are currently living in a political moment in which there's going to be a lot of changes happening in the coming years. But, I think towards the end of your book, you talk very, strongly and firmly in terms of like these calls to actions, whether it be of medical institutions themselves, medical schools, Black communities, non-Black folks and physicians, training institutions. You talk about things like in terms of addressing like the larger structural determinants of health in terms of, universal health care. You talk about the need for community-led initiatives, such as things that were done by the Panthers in terms of like free health clinics.
Yep.
And you talk about like the need for those who are non-Black or, physicians who are in positions of power to really make commitments towards larger structural transformative change. Considering what's to come.
You did a great summary.
Stop.
You did.
Thank you. But it's because I agree and I think about these things a lot. But just from your perspective and from the work that you currently do, what do you see as our call to action in the coming years in terms of the work that we have to do?
Yes, I think with the change in administration, I think we just have to dig in deeper in terms of the work that we are already doing. So all the call to action, all the items that you mentioned, we just have to really push harder on those. But the other thing is I want to make sure is I don't think that we need to be or can't be martyrs all the time. And I say this because it's very important that you take care of yourselves, right? So you can still care very deeply and still do the work. So I would say, maybe choose one or two areas that you want to focus on, right? Recognize that you can't spread yourself too thin, because I think a lot of times, we want to do this work for the long term. We want to make it sustainable, but we also have to care for ourselves. And so that's actually the one note that I want to say, like, whether it's, local initiatives that you think about volunteering, getting involved with, help amplifying like a local community-based health organization, or if you want to do policy work, whatever it is, you choose one or two areas, right? And you say, this is what I have the bandwidth for, and this is what I will focus on to make a difference. If that changes, you can, what my therapist says, you tap in and tap out. You tap in and tap out. Like, you cannot, you can't just keep going.
Listen,
going,
shout out to
going.
our therapist.
Yeah,
Real talk. Shout out to our
yes, no,
therapist.
truly. And I talk in the book about a medical student I worked with, Natasha, and I have to check in with her. No, and she gave full permission. Like she edited the chapter and everything. But Natasha, she did so much work, DEI work during medical school, that when she started residency, she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. Because she literally single-handedly started a program called the SEED program, which essentially created families for incoming students. So if you're an incoming student of color, you get assigned like a family. So it's a residence, attendings. We would take them out to dinner like every quarter, just so they felt like there was, you know,
like
a sense of
like
community.
a network of support.
Yeah.
Peer
And
support.
yeah, because when she was a second year, the first year class at NYU had one Black student. And she's like, no, this cannot happen. And
What's
so
going on with NYU?
I know. So anyway, like literally she and her classmates single-handedly increased the percentage of Black students the following year, just given all their efforts. But she ended up being very exhausted afterwards. And so I said, like, you know, we have to, again, make sure that we're not exhausting ourselves with this, and we realize it's a marathon and not a sprint. And then hold your community close to you, like find your folks who also care deeply about the work that you do so that you can fill each other's cup.
Words of wisdom. Words of wisdom. So I have no idea how we're doing on time, but can we do like one or two questions from the crowd maybe? Okay.
But we do have some more time with Dr. Blackstock, and I know some of you brought your book.
Oh yes, yeah. If I can
They
sign.
were all given copies of the book.
Thank you.
By Dr.
And just to say, can I just say one thing? I wrote this book for my younger self. Like, this is the book that I wish I could have read as a medical student or before I went to med school. So I really hope, I know you all are busy, but if you take the time to read, or I also narrated the audiobook, so I don't know how people listen to audiobooks, but a lot of people say that they really enjoyed the audio. They actually got Audible's Best of 2024 nonfiction books. Thank you.
One of our classmates actually read listened to the audiobook. Yeah, one of our classmates did.
So they felt like, I felt like I was in the room with you. Sorry. Okay, go on, Dean. Go ahead.
And I was just going to say that if you brought your book for her to sign,
Yes.
I understand you have to leave us at 2.
No, at 2:30.
At 2:30?
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have time for questions.
Okay.
So this is one of the students' books we left for you to sign.
Okay. Sure. Yes.
So they're reading.
Okay. Thank you.
We have one audience question right here.
Do you want? Hey, why don't you?
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, sorry. Okay. Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Samia Ali. I am originally from Seattle, Washington area and grew up with refugee parents. I'm a first-year medical student here. I share that because one thing that was incredibly profound to hear and also kind of scary was the decision you made to go from Harvard Medical School, a very well-resourced, well-funded medical institution and medical school, to returning back to home. That is something that I have always told myself, whether the home is in South End Seattle where food deserts exist or back home to Somalia and refugee camps. It is a decision that is difficult because especially with many of us, we are first generation students, first one in my family to go to university, medical school, to even think of the idea. And there's bills. It's scary, and I almost worry about choosing the residency program that is going to fund me and fund my education and potentially give me a well-paying salary after, and maybe just wait when I'm a little bit more settled to choose that back home public hospital that needs the support. So how did you wrestle with that decision and knowing that it is already so difficult as a woman of color, as a Black physician in America, to choose that decision? Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing all of that too. So actually, it wasn't a hard decision at all. I at that time I was so done with being at a predominantly white institution. And I needed to feel grounded and be back home. And I needed to be at an institution where I cared for patients who actually, not only looked like me, they basically looked like my family. And I felt I also felt like I was appreciated more as well. So it was a mutually beneficial relationship. That hospital not only was there diversity among the patient population, but among the faculty and staff. So I would be on shifts in the ER where my attending was Black, my resident was Black. Like, you would look around on a shift and it's like, you don't have that at a lot of hospitals. And so that's what I knew my soul needed for my residency training. I literally was so, I was so done. But I also write about in the book how it was not easy. It was not easy training there. Right? Like, I had to be everything for my patient. I remember, like, sometimes patients would say, can you be my doctor, because you literally are doing everything for, like, the patient next to me, because, you know, transport, phlebotomy, like, everything. As a fourth-year resident, as a chief resident, I was still doing all of that for my patients. And I talk about really experiencing burnout just because of the lack of resources, right? So, you know, it was challenging. It was a challenging experience, but still, I consider Kings County my home. You know, I go back all the time.
No, I appreciate that, especially in terms of what you mentioned, like having to do everything. I think that's part of the larger work that we have to do, right? Yeah. Where it's like, because of the way that the system is structured, it puts us in positions where there are those disparities within the institutions, you know, public versus private, in the institutions that are in our communities versus those that are in upper class communities. And so I think that's part of the work, right? Because we have to create new conditions for ourselves so that it can be sustainable for us to do the work long term.
Right, and I always think like burnout is not like a personal issue. Burnout is a systemic issue, an institutional issue.
100%. And then, yes.
Dr. Jessie.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Jessie Gerard, founder of the Association of Black Women Physicians. And I'd like to say, we just in October 27th, we gave Dr. Uche Blackstock our special Visionary Award. And it was an honor, and it's an honor to be here and to see what I mean, you can imagine what she was like if she produced two young ladies like this, right? And I also have to thank Dr. Blackstock for making me famous by putting me in her book on page 24. and you know, we have other Harvard people here, Deborah Prothrow-Stith, our founding dean of the CDU, Dr. Richard Allen Williams, who is the founder of Association of Black Cardiologists. And my question, you know, I want to reemphasize something that you said, because it's very, very important, because we tend to focus on careers and what career am I going to do? And there are three main questions that you need to ask yourself, and this is for the students. Who am I? What is my purpose? Why am I here? Those are the three questions that you need to answer as you travel this journey called life. And I can remember being at the diversity reunion in 2019, and Uche was there, Dr. Blackstock, and we were just talking. I said, well, what are you going to do? She was leaving NYU then, I think, right? She said, oh, I'm going to start my own foundation. And, you know, I've been offered the position, the DEI position at Harvard Medical School. I guess it's okay to say that, right? And she said, you know what? So she said to me, well, you know, no, I'm not going to take that position. I'm going to let them work out their own problems. She said, so it's great for me to see that you have realized your intention. So if you focus your attention on the intention, the universe works out the detail. You don't have to know how, all you have to know is what. So she knew what, and the universe has, you see it's working right here before our eyes. I mean, it's amazing to me, and I'm so deeply touched and honored to be in your presence, and you're doing such an excellent job. My question is concerning the new, you know, environment that we're in now, I'll say it that way. It's like Jim Crow on steroids. You know, history rocks in the reels of time, and it repeats itself. In the restructuring, and you mentioned that in your book, I'm just wondering if you can kind of comment on how you see our universities, our black universities, playing a part in that restructuring, in that we're now taking out DEI, quote, So how do we creatively include DEI? So very important. Diversity is it. I mean, we learn from each other. We enrich ourselves from all the different cultures. So that's my question, but commendations on your presentation. It's been excellent. Thank you.
Preach, doctor, preach. And this is going to be our last question.
Okay. No, Dr. Jesse, I don't have a perfect answer to that. I think this is an opportunity, as it always is, for community building. Like, this is when we get together, right? When we actually find our colleagues in other institutions and say, you know, what's working for you? You know, we what do you call it? Crowdsource, or just like
brainstorm,
yeah, or just, you know, we get together, you know. So I also see, like, you know, it's NMA working with Black legal organizations, right, with other Black policy organizations. It's us coming out of our silos and really being strategic about how we're going to address these next 4 years. Because I was just talking to one of my team members at Advancing Health Equity, and he does some work with a lot of work with some pharma companies and health adjacent companies. He said he was on a call with some of their leadership where they said, you know, we're going to start defunding all of these, you know, DEI health equity initiatives, right? Because of the pressure, right, and the legal pressure, right? So these are big names, right? So we really need to be smart and strategic and use our brain power, use our resources, get out of our silos, and community build. This is, I mean, I know we already do it, but we have to do it now more than ever. Collaborate. Yes, exactly, Dr. Jesse.
If I could just add a little bit.
Yes, please, Dean. Here.
She has a mic.
Just make sure everyone hears. I always want to make sure everybody hears.
You're looking at a generation right here, thinking of us as examples of this generation. We had a certain set of trials and ways, but we need your generation, and I'm talking to our medical students as well, to tap into us, because there's a lot going on in the world, digitally and otherwise, that we don't know. And younger generations tend to distance themselves a little bit because the older generation doesn't know. Don't do that to us. We need you. We need you to tell us. If we don't know, tell us, so we can know and so we can come together. Because these are dangerous times. If we are about to enter Jim Crow all over again, that's when lynching took place in this country. That's when a whole lot of segregation took place in this country. Things that were right were wrong again. And so don't leave us out.
We have the wisdom.
We have some wisdom.
That's what the Ankofa is about. You know, the bird, Sankofa. The bird is stepping forward with an egg and looking back. So you have to have the wisdom in order to move forward and have the evolution. Otherwise, you lose your foundation if you don't include the older people. You can educate us, and we can actually give you the education too, and let you know what needs to be done, because we've been through it. I grew up in Mississippi picking cotton for 2 cents a pound. You know, 10 hours a day, and I ended up going to Harvard Medical School. I don't even know how that happened, right? But it did. God is good. But I just emphasize that because we had that. We've experienced that in our association. You know, we had the younger people come in and say, well, you know, these old women can't tell us anything. I'm not going to sit down and listen to some old women trying to tell me something.
And we have a comment over here.
Can I just say something briefly? So I'm a mentee and I'm a daughter by love of Dr. Ruth Creary, and we need examples. I would not have gotten my doctorate in clinical psychology without Dr. Ruth Creary, and she and her daughter, thank you. She and her daughter, Bridget, took me to lunch every semester, and she would write me inspiring cards, and I kept them. I was one of 3 Black females that started at Pepperdine in 2011. I am the only one that graduated. One dropped out after 3 months, and another got through the process of all her classes. and internship and did not finish because of different hostilities I'd experienced. So, but I don't want to harp on that as much because every single one of us here is a survivor. I do want to share something that Dr. Creary said at a seminal birthday celebration that we had. And it wasn't just celebrating Dr. Ruth Creary's life, which is fantastic in itself. It's what I feel that the community as a collective has overcome. And so even though that I did not go through medical school, to go through 4 different schools in psychology, to have 2 different faculty panels after I had achieved every marker of success, and was right before I got actually invited to go to Stanford for internship. My head of my department said I did not have the affect of my classmates, and based on his 50 years of clinical judgment, that he did not want to give me the green light to go to to go on to internship. And so, but it is because of a Black woman at Santa Monica College and a Hispanic woman, that women of color that could see our greatness. So we need to work together. But one thing I want to get back to Dr. Ruth Creary is that I was saying about this great celebration, and she said it's 3-4 generations that came together. So we have that here. And when you talk about the Black Panther, they didn't ask permission. You talk about Shirley Chisholm, she didn't ask permission. Kamala Harris did not ask permission to be Attorney General. And so I am at the point now at 54, like I'm done asking permission, because you get to a certain point, and I'm just gonna say it plain, like I am a multimillionaire, I have my doctorate, I cannot get more education. I cannot get more education. I am at the point where I need you, if we can have American University in Dubai, why can't we have a PhD program for psychology? And we in silos, we need to get like the National Medical Association, Association of Black Psychologists, people that we know that are our colleagues that have PR firms and advertising to get the word out, because I know for myself, I have all these great ideas, but they need to be unlocked by experts that have that. So I need to tap into my colleagues that are, NFL alums, and my colleagues that are vice presidencies at Disney to tell our stories. And we need to break out the silos and stop asking our corporations permission as well. Permission for us to be great together.
Thank you
I have
so
a comment
much.
that I'd like to make,
Oh, okay.
if I could. I'm Dr. Richard Allen Williams, and I've been kind of complicit with a lot of things that Dr. Jesse Sherrod had made, and also Dr. Deborah Prothero-Stith. And I've had some experiences like what Dr. Uche Blackstock has had over all these years. I've come to the point at the age of 88 to recognize the fact that we are indeed on the brink of going back to the future, so to speak, as Dr. Prothero-Stith mentioned, with the changes that have occurred recently. We're going to be going backwards, not forward, in the very near future, if you know what I mean. I'm not going to give a speech or anything, but I wanted to mention that we need to have more forums, more gatherings, more meetings of the mind like this. And we have, under the Minority Health Institute, something that is coming up on December 13th, which you may be interested in attending. It's the Imhotep Awards Gala, which is going to be occurring at the JW Marriott Hotel downtown on Friday, December 13th. And it will feature the awards being given to a number of outstanding Black physicians who have not been acknowledged before, who need to be recognized for their accomplishments. And it also will recognize the need for us to come together to advance the needle of health equity, to move that needle. So this is going to be quite an event. We invite you all to attend. I have some flyers here which outline the program and so forth, and won't take any further time, but urge you to consider coming and honoring these outstanding physicians. That will include a keynote address by our very own Dr. David Carlisle, and an award which is going to be given to our very own Dr. Deborah Prothero-Stith, among others. So Please come and honor folks. We're also inviting some of the CDU medical students to attend, of course, gratis, and we hope to see you all there to enjoy this occasion, celebrate our black physicians and the accomplishments and the sacrifices that they've made for communities of color all of these years. Thank you very much.
And if everyone can give Dr. Blackstock one more round of applause. We appreciate everyone for coming today. One more announcement.
Our HIV Research and Education Unit, run by Dr. LaShonda Spencer, right there, is hosting Dr. Blackstock's twin sister Thursday as a part of our World Health Day. HIV World AIDS Day celebration. So in a couple of days, we'll be hosting Oni, the twin of our, isn't that wonderful? All right.
9:30 for breakfast.
And then 10 o'clock for the talk. Okay. All right, thank you, Dr. Blackstock.
I know, we couldn't make it work schedule-wise. But thank you, and I'm happy to sign some books if anyone has them.
Yes, if you have your books,
yeah,
please bring them up. Yes, it's book signing time.
Thank you.